Hello, lovely humans. I'm Luna Robbie, and you are listening to Sex Stories, a podcast of personal histories where we learn from each other and practice deep, non judgmental listening in order to co create a more loving world. If you want to express your love for this show, you can find ad free episodes on Patreon, get personal with me on OnlyFans, sign up to be a guest, and check out the awesome brands to support our show. Links are in the description below or visit sexstoriespodcast.com. Now, please enjoy this episode. Our guest today is a 51-year-old straight white Jewish man whose quest for love is equal parts endearing, head-scratching, and vomit-inducing. A 20-year veteran of the adult film industry, he is a former producer, director, and cameraman who worked for Brazzers for 16 years and is now also an author. He has written a book about all of his experiences that we are hopefully going to get a sneak peek of some stories here today. Originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, now based in Las Vegas, Nevada. Welcome, Vic Lagina.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on and talk with you.
I am so excited to have you here. Could you pretty please start out by telling us if you had to rate yourself on a sexual shame-o-meter, with 10 being the most full of shame and 0 being like, I don't have any, what are you talking about? Where do you fall today, and when, if ever, has it squiggled over the years?
I'd say right now I'm at a solid 5. I'm going to
Okay.
stay straight and narrow. I will tell you that now everything's good. However, when I was in the porn industry, especially as a single man, sometimes things went a little sideways. And that was when I would say the shame-o-meter would notch up towards the 10.
Okay.
But generally speaking, overall, I had a lot of good experiences. That would be no shame whatsoever. So when you mix them all together and you get the average, 5 is where we are.
Okay, so it's an average of 5 made out of shame-o coaster squiggles, is what it sounds like.
Yes.
Okay. When you're like walking around in the world, like at a baseline, where do you feel like if you're meeting someone new, what context do you feel like more like, ooh, and what context are you like, no, I'm totally comfortable?
Oh, I'm totally comfortable because I've seen it and done pretty much it all.
Okay.
A lot of times when people speak to me, or let's say in the past when they've wanted to go there with me, they were the ones uncomfortable because of how experienced and how much I have seen. So you can't throw me for a loop. You're talking to a guy who has seen many prolapsed anuses in his day. So you get through those, you're going to get through anything just about.
That's awesome. Wait, have you kept track of how many you've seen? I've never seen one.
There has to be at least a dozen
Okay.
over the years, if not more. Anal scenes were a big part of what I shot. Orgies were a big part of what I shot. And let's just say sometimes these performers, they did an excessive amount of anal. Therefore, prolapsed anuses were the regular and the norm for them.
Okay. For our listeners who have not experienced or are unfamiliar with prolapsed anuses, can you just give us like a little overview on what's happening? And is it life threatening? Like, are they okay later? Does it go back? Like, I know a little more about other types of prolapse.
If you were to look at a butthole, it looks like a tongue coming out of it, like this alien tongue that gets pushed out. Now, is it a problem? No. I mean, you could roll it back up and shove it back in.
Yeah.
However, if someone were to be doing anal scenes a lot, or doing it on their personal life, or in some cases, if they're taking, fists and other things, then yeah, I would say diapers are in their future for
Okay.
sure.
Okay. Do you ever worry that stuff like that causes people to be like afraid of anal or like poop negative? Because I mean, also, I'm sure if you've seen not only prolapsed anuses, you've probably seen some shit in your time, right?
100%. Yeah, the job can get dirty at times. Well, what I would suggest is for those who are anal curious,
I'm a butt
slow and
slut.
steady. Yeah,
Okay.
slow and steady is the way, because you can't just go excessive. I mean, I think most people who are outside of porn, they're not going to throw it into sixth gear right away. I mean, there's an easing into it period where you may start with butt plugs and then you may start with the real thing. So you never want to go full throttle when it comes to your butt because that's when tears and blood and all sorts of bad things happen. So slow and steady wins the race here.
I love that. And we hopefully are very pro lubricant, especially for all anal play things. Okay, I'm so out of order. I'm like getting into details before we even know your overviews of things. Let's zoom out a little bit and get to know Vic Lagina's work. How would you say your work in the world helps people love and or woo themselves and or each other? Like what do you think is the connection aspect of the work that you have done?
I'd say most of what I have done is a fantasy. And that fantasy, I would say, is entertain people, or I guess to really break it down, give them orgasms, mainly men. I mean, I'm not going to say women don't watch the scenes that I've shot because all women are different. I've been told women are more cerebral. There's a lot of erotica that women tend to gravitate to, but then there are women who actually watch porn. So I've I try to do a calculation with based on how many millions of views my content has seen over the years. And I make a joke in the book that I might have filled up like an Olympic sized swimming pool of men's ejaculate. Yeah,
It's a lot.
all throughout worldwide. Yeah, it was that much. But I have had friends who literally used my scenes, my product to enhance their sex life. So
That's cool.
it runs the gamut for sure.
I fucking love that. In a hypothetical world where all of your wishes would come true if you swam through that pool of semen, would you do it?
Yeah, why not? If all my hopes and dreams. I
Okay, and then
mean,
I would
that's
film it. Okay.
yeah. Well, yeah, we didn't talk about filming, but think about it.
You can
All
wear
hopes and
clothes.
dreams, everything you want, for what is a let's say a 30 second swim. It would be disgusting, but hey, if
I like
world
your
peace is
attitude.
on the top of my head, and I want that for the world, peace and love and harmony. Sure, I would take one for the team for sure. Team Earth.
I love that. I love that so much. Thank you for playing my game. These are the types of questions and fantasies that pop into my head often. So, feeling free to express myself with you based on my assumptions of your comfort is truly and utterly delightful. I do have a follow up question. What is it like to be a straight monogamous man whose creative work has just gotten a lot of other dudes off? Like, how do you think about that? That's so fun.
Well, it was a journey. I mean, the whole time, start to finish, was 20 years. I'd say most of it I was single. However, the times that I was in relationships, they were not always the most functional, healthy, non toxic relationships. And I think it had a lot to do with the work that I was doing. Even though I wasn't a performer, I was seeing it every day. And sometimes because I wasn't even trying to hook up or trying to get laid, just being more of a professional businessman that was considerate and not hitting on anyone. Well, the byproduct of that is that you have women attracted to you because you're not being the typical sleazy pornographer. You're being
Mm,
a stand up man. So I was in it for a while. I'd say maybe 6 out of the 20 years, maybe 8 of the 20 years, I was in a relationship. The rest I was single. So sometimes, especially when I got wiser, when I became porn Yoda and I got into a relationship, I had to say, well, look, I think the only way this is going to work out is if it's an open situation. And I tried that, and it worked for 6 months or 9 months. Not because it was an open relationship, it was because she was a foreigner and she wanted a green card. That's why it didn't work out.
oh, yeah.
So this was the first Trump presidency, and getting green cards was difficult to come by. And she wanted to get married, but I didn't think that was a wise idea. So for the most part, it was me being single and navigating the waters in porn as a single man.
Okay. Also, I relate to that. My early on in my young years, I was like, maybe I will get married. He needs a passport. That could be fun. Like, I've never really had many designs on marriage personally. But okay, so are you like thinking through the experience of your viewers as you're creating, or is it more like just following your own inspiration? I know you also mentioned being very professional, but like my background is in mainstream filmmaking, but all of my work now is so slutty. And I know that also relatable. I know like what it's like to scare people from the sex related work that you do. How did you navigate, creating that turn on? And like, did you allow yourself to get turned on at work while maintaining professional boundaries? Like, what was that like for you? And really, how much are you thinking about the guys that are jerking off to your content that you're making? Whether it's for Brazzers or for anything else you're creating. Like, how much are you thinking about them or just following your own inspiration, shall we say?
Well, I have the same background as you. I have 6 years of higher education in TV and film production from esteemed universities. So every day that I was working, I was creating a film, literally. Now, the orders which were passed down from me came from the head office. They gave me exactly what they wanted in order to market the porn that I was shooting to their consumers, whether it be the tube sites or through the trailers that happened on Brazzers.com. But it wasn't really rocket science. I mean, their formula in the earlier years, it got weird towards the end.
Mhm.
But the early years was big boobs, hot porn stars, hot sex. Okay. And this was something that I would consume normally when I was a single man. So creating that was not very difficult. It was like, well, what would I like to see? And therefore I shot it that way, assuming everyone was on board. We were all about consent. We were all about consideration, respecting people. So that's where it was in for a good majority of my career. But like I said, the wheels got a little wobbly towards the end when the searches that were going on Pornhub, which dictated what we were shooting, I was walking into work some days thinking, I have no idea what we're doing today. Okay, I'm gonna give it my best shot. So it really did change over the course of those 16 years with Brazzers.
Oh, interesting. When you say I have no idea what we're doing, was it like terms you're unfamiliar with, or like you're like, I don't know what that kink is, or what do you mean?
The concepts. Like I was writing about, well, I'm writing potentially a second book now, and I was writing about certain things that very topic of things I didn't quite understand, and a lot of what they were passing down to us came from searches on Pornhub, and a lot of the more popular scenes, or the ones that had a lot of views, were Japanese porn or Russian porn, and the one that I recall was in the original clip. It was a girl on her back with like a piece of two-way mirror glass like over her while she's on her back, which when you think about that, that's not really safe. It's kind of dangerous to have a piece of glass that has a cutout like right here that is one way or the other. Now the clip was for supposed to be 10 guys having sex with her, and her the concept being she doesn't know who's having sex with her next. But in their concept, they didn't have a budget for 10 guys. They had a budget for 3 guys. So I was looking at this thing, I was like, we're like really not doing this at all. And I'm just like, okay, let's just get through this day and let's hope all these guys can stay hard. Let's hope they all can pop. And they did, but think about this. You have to make a 30-minute scene with one position with 3 guys. That gets kind of boring and tedious quick. So those are the days that I'm like, yep, just gonna give it like a good old try and see how we do. And we always accomplish the mission usually if the girl was sober and didn't derail herself, for sure.
Okay, okay. Whoa, a lot of stereotypes packed into that statement. Could you tell us a little bit for people who maybe don't know, especially on, say, a Brazzers type set, what the actual process is like? So we heard you say 30-minute scene. That's the resulting scene usually, right? So tell us how long you're actually shooting. What is the filmmaking style? I know that in adult content it varies across the board, but like how much are you starting and stopping? What kind of setups? What do we not see happen off camera?
So this is what I talk about in my book Filthy, what a typical day looks like. But essentially, unless they requested otherwise, girls will be flying in from LA, getting in on the 8 o'clock flight. We would pick them up at the airport, put them into makeup and hair. I'd give them their script, which was just like maybe 10 pages tops. Sometimes they looked at it, sometimes they didn't, sometimes they stayed on their phone. Once they were out of hair and makeup, they moved to the pretty girl section where they're just taking glamour pictures, stuff for design. Then we break down the script. We're like, okay, let's figure out. We have to do pictures of the intro. And during the pictures, this is when everyone's rehearsing. And now you're doing, the scripted portion where you're covering from all angles. And I'm rolling. Okay, let's move here. Boom, got it. Move. Let's move to this angle. Let's get the reverse. Let's get this. Let's get that. And that's how it went. Once all that was done, and most performers were thankful to be done with that because they didn't really want to, I'm not going to say all of them. A lot of them just didn't want to do the acting. They just wanted to show up, have sex, get paid, and go home. So once we got past all of that stuff, then they would do their hygiene section. After that, we would do the stills, the pictures. And that was the choreography of the sex scene itself. And if they were paying attention, then the sex part became really easy because I knew it was coming. They should know it was coming. And I would tell them, cut if you need to. But, if you see me going like this, it means move on to the next one. And they would move on and I would follow. And sometimes we would do a whole scene without a cut, which I took it as they're really enjoying themselves and we're having a good product as a result. But then, sometimes need a break, they need a lube break, they need a breather because some of them were not in the best conditioning, I would say, to have sustainable sex.
Most people aren't.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's why you should applaud a lot of these performers because
Yeah,
there is a lot of athleticism in it.
the
But generally,
Olympics.
an entire day from start to finish would be like 8 hours, and then I would sign them out, pay them, they would go back to the airport and fly home, and that was a typical day.
Okay. Okay. So, wow, 8 hours is pretty tight. And that sounds potentially awesome. And also, I know how every set is full of its own surprises. What would you
Mhm.
say are your favorite parts about the work that you've done? Like, what are the parts that where you're really like, oh, yeah, fuck yeah.
Well, when the concept was simple, when the concepts became just ridiculous because they were looking for ad moments for the ads on Pornhub to get people to click and then join Brazzers, a lot of these concepts, like the concepts itself, and the sex scene itself, wasn't even like secondary. It was sometimes tertiary on the level of importance.
Mm,
More important was the ad moments. But if you had a simple concept, which was a tease, a hot outfit, a hot set, like everything just looked good, and you had two performers who wanted to be there, and they were really into each other, and they're just going, and you feel like you just stepped up to the plate and you just smacked one out and you walk home thinking we did a great job today. So those were the days that I really enjoyed, and there were a lot of them in the early years, but as it got towards the end, those are few and far between, so when they happened I really appreciated them.
okay. I totally hear that. When you say ad concepts, what are you talking about? And now I'm like, oh, maybe this has been my problem as a sales human in the world. Are you talking about like when porn thumbnails don't match the content at all, or what do you mean? Like what are ad
No.
moments?
So if you were to go on any of the tube sites and you would see the ads playing, usually, at least for Brazzers, you see a girl, her eyes get big, and then you see guys using their rigorous motion, and then you see squirt going everywhere, and it just looks crazy to the point where our goal was to get the viewer to be like, I got to click on that to see what it's about.
Yeah.
It was all clickbait shit. And that's
Okay.
really what was important because the business model, at least Pornhub back then, Pornhub now is a lot different. But Pornhub back then, I mean, literally had hundreds of millions of users a day. Okay. So if you're trying to get someone to go over to the pay sites and you have like a fraction of that, 0.01%, that click and join Brazzers, you have a successful business model based on the traffic alone. So it was all important during third ownership, and I made it through three owners, that was the most important aspect. It wasn't
Okay.
the girl, it wasn't the sex, it wasn't any of that. It was clickbait advertising.
Wow. Okay, well, no wonder it's not being fun.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I always say the third ownership slowly sucked all of the joy out of the job, whereas previous ownerships, especially in the beginning, when we were building up this company that's becoming Brazzers and they become the biggest company. Those were the fun days, the big expansion, even though it was crazy and busy, that was fun. But when third ownership took over, ooh, they were very efficient, and I don't mind efficiency, but it got to the point where it was just chiseling because the fat cats wanted theirs. That
Uh,
that plain and simple.
damn. Yep, I know all about
Yeah.
that. Okay, well, that's kind of a bummer because literally everyone suffers except the people taking that money. That does not sound very sexy. This podcast exists because we're trying to talk about things that are sexy. I would love to hear what is sexy to you? Like, you've shot so many sex related scenes, it sounds like, across all types of genres. What a cool, weird way to learn. If you had to define it for yourself, like, what do you actually find sexy?
Yeah, so I have seen a lot, 3,792 scenes over the course of that 20-year career. Now, what do I find sexy? You know what? When you scale it back, when you're not dealing with the heavy makeup and the heavy glam and the over the top. I am a very let's scale back, let's go more natural. Let's accentuate the natural beauty of people rather than creating this ridiculous fantasy that isn't real. So when I started seeing women that weren't the Brazzers mold with the big boobs and the big butts and all that, when you had someone who literally they're just naturally beautiful, that's when I was like, oh, this is going to be a unique and fun experience because
Mm,
that to me was the sexy part. You're not contaminating this with all of this. I'll use the term mishigas, which is like nonsense and baggage. You don't need all of that. So that was what I chose. That's what I would like.
yeah, fuck yeah. I totally feel that. How did you yourself learn about love, sex, and connection growing up? Like, did you ever get a pleasure education? Did you get a sex talk? Did you get sex ed in school? Like, what was that like?
Well, we had all the above, but it first starts by finding like my father's Playboys. Talk about what I just said about selling a fantasy. Of course, now these are Playboys of the '80s. This is before things got really ridiculous with the plastic surgery and everything else.
Mm,
But that's where you start. That's where you see the naked human form, and so that gets some questions. And then I went to summer camp. The counselors had their smut magazines, which were not Playboy. They were about as extreme as you can go. So you're seeing all that. And then you're like, if you're not running away scared and fucked by sex, you're kind of trying to figure it all out. You're seeing another version. Now, mind you, this is when you're still like in your young teenage years. This is still well before, you probably should be watching that content, but at least it wasn't as graphic as and accessible as things are today. Then, you get into seventh, eighth grade, ninth grade, you start going into sex education in the public education system. And I'll tell you, it was good, at least for where I grew up outside in the suburbs of Philadelphia, where you learn all of that. And then, you go out there and you start riding the bike. You start having these real sexual experiences. And I mean, that, like anything, is a learning and growing process of figuring out what you like, what you don't like. And even before porn, there were plenty of those experiences for me. So I had to kind of figure all of that out, what it was I really enjoyed. And I'll tell you, porn did not destroy sex for me to the point where I had to really push it in order to get turned on. Matter of fact, I would define my sex life as typically vanilla. I mean,
mhm.
I'm a pleaser. I want my partner to enjoy themselves. I've always wanted my partners to enjoy themselves because let's face it, you want a repeat customer,
Yeah.
and sometimes, I definitely had my share of mulligans as well. Like, oh, I was just way too hopped up and I really was just charged up and I just could have done better. And there were plenty of those where I think, yeah, I wish I could have done that one over again. Hopefully I'll get a chance. But
Mm.
sometimes you don't. And you have to be like, okay, well, I'm still going to learn from that one anyway of what not to do. Or sometimes if you really think that's going to be a problem, before you even go out and meet this person, go rub one out. Go rub one out.
Totally. I've
So
done
yeah,
that.
so when you get there, you're at ease because you're not going to have trouble getting an erection again if you're a healthy individual, as I was. So then that time would be pleasurable, where you're not stopping every 5 seconds because it feels so damn good. So in that sense, yeah, I had to have a lot of experience what I learned and dialed in what I liked, especially
Yeah.
towards the end of my career.
Okay. Oh, there's so much I want to dive into there. Okay, first question.
Mm.
How do you imagine your sex life would have been different if you had grown up, like if you're like, instead of Playboy, if you had watched some of the pornos that you made later on down the road?
Well, I wish I would hope to have someone like sit me down and say, okay, kid, this is not real.
Mm.
This is a fantasy that we are selling. And they do play on a lot of fantasies. Look, as when I was in high school, you have a hot teacher, and you're thinking, oh, if I would do anything, like you have those fantasies. So porn does play on those fantasies. Of course, it does with people who are of age, obviously. But um, I would just hit home the fact that it is a fantasy. I would say the facial is not your finishing move, okay? Unless it's discussed ahead of time. You have
Yeah.
to have respect for the person you're with. You have to get clearances, if you will, of things you can and can't do. So if I were to tell, I would tell this message anyway as an older person. It's not a training manual. It's a fantasy, and there's more you really need to know when you're having that. And I think that has gotten lost on a lot of the younger generations.
Totally. Well, and so many people who I speak to feel like they don't have better options to really see everything. So, okay, feel free to crush my dreams, but literally one of my like evolving life goals might be creating edurotic content because like I stumbled into basically adult sex ed and now I am also a sex worker and I really believe sex work is an underutilized way to help people learn. However, it's
Hmm.
mostly not framed that way. So, usually
Right?
people are learning by accident. And I'm kind of like I have a like sex ed project that's kind of like paralleling the podcast. And then I'm like, after that, I might just go get naked with a lot of people. And I know the industry culturally is not really set up for that. Although I know there are some people who do educational stuff. Do you see, long question, all my details, do you see any sort of world in which there could be helpful, successful, entertaining porn that teaches people how to fuck better?
Absolutely. And I think there's I think I've actually talked to people who do that or are
Mm.
thinking about doing it. I think the biggest concern you should have. I've seen a lot of these videos, and they're with people that you would see at a swingers resort. And so therefore they're not the most pleasing to look at, so therefore you're not really going to want to stay tuned in. So I
I
think
see.
people need to be mindful of that the attractiveness of the model would sustain viewers longer.
Oh,
But
but
I
do you think I'm hot enough? I think I
of
could do
course
it.
of
Okay.
course
I'm
of
like, no,
course
I'm volunteering.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
like,
and like,
maybe.
and to be honest with you too, um, I would always hear complaints from members about the males that were in the productions.
Oh, how so?
Yeah, yeah, they don't like this guy. His dick is not big enough. He's overweight. He's this or that. So it's important.
What?
This is what I'm saying. Yeah,
Oh,
have both, and make it informative,
yeah.
but get the point across, educational, and maybe throw a little humor in to
Oh, yes.
sustain the viewer,
I'm accidentally
And
very silly oftentimes.
yeah,
Do you feel like being on set for yourself and seeing, I mean, it's a literally performance focused job. Like you are directing a performance focused thing in a very specific way. Performance for camera, performance for sex. I imagine in your shoes that it could be hard to like not have that rub off on you, but it sounds like you're chill as fuck. Like it sounds like you don't have anxiety that can, kind of make a penis not have a good time at a penis party. But like
mm,
it sounds like that didn't affect you. Did it ever? Or like is that something you're comfortable speaking to?
sure, sure. Well, I mean, the guys that I would hire were, the top of the business, because in porn, they're your anchor.
Yeah,
And if you don't have
literally.
a strong man, you're not going to have a good scene. And that was a high pressure environment sometimes because of the concepts that we were doing. And sometimes there would be a time constraint where you need that dude, or you have light, maybe sometimes sunlight
Mm-hmm.
going away. So you have to be sure your guy is on point. But sex on screen is not sex in your bedroom. I mean, you're if it's comfortable, you're probably doing it wrong for camera,
Yeah.
because you have to open up, you have to prop up, the women have to prop up their bodies in certain positions. you have to open up for lights, you have to open up for camera, and it's not easy. So the male performers are the unsung heroes in porn production, and that's why I hired like the same dudes, like maybe the same 10 dudes over and over and over again, because with the production dollars on the line that we had, and sometimes the circumstances we had them, we needed guys that could fill it. So
Mm.
don't think because you're good at bedroom sex in your bedroom that you would be good at sex in porn,
Oh yeah.
because it's a horse of another color
It's
completely.
also just speaking as a female who has encountered dates who were like, well, my last girlfriend told me that I should do porn. And then I was like, well, that's really, really interesting. And this person was a TV writer. So I was like, oh my gosh, have I told you about my latest idea for a script? I was like, that's what that's doing, like, and he's like, sorry, 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 sorry. So I totally hear you. Do you think they're unsung, or do you mean in terms of attention? Because I'm like, unsung, like the whole point of most porn is their ejaculation, and that's a pretty good, I mean, that's literally a celebration, like fireworks. But I see what you're saying, like the point of view of who gets attention because of boobies.
Yes, the product is the woman, at least in the porn that I shot.
Mm,
They were the product. They are what sold the product, not the dude. I mean, on the gay side, sure, of course, the dudes are the product. But in the straight porn that I was shooting, guys are just like, yeah, they're the dick. I mean, that's
I
in
see.
simplest terms, they're the dick. Yeah.
Interesting. So even though it's like usually their ejaculation that caps a scene, because that's just a projection for the viewer, it's not the like focus. Is what you're getting at.
Yeah, I would say the only guaranteed orgasm of the day was on the man side, for
Right.
sure.
Dang. Man, I think about so many people who've told me they've learned from porn, and just the fact that that is true for so many. Okay, well, everything could change. I remain hopeful. Oh, we skipped this. What's your professional origin story? You said you went to film school, so you, like me, are a lover of. I mean, I'm guessing you're. I call myself a camera voyeur sometimes. Like, did you always like slutty things, or was that kind of like an accident? I mean, mine was a little accident, but also I was like, oh, this tracks. This makes sense. Why didn't I see it sooner?
I mean, yeah, the first part of my book is called The Inadvertent Pornographer, Part One.
Ooh, what a great,
And
great, great subtitle.
yeah, thank you. No, I mean, I grew up loving movies, TV, video games, all of that. And when you graduate high school, at least with my parents, it was, you go to college. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So my brother was going to Syracuse, and at that point, 2 years earlier, I had lost my mother. So going to college where he was a sense of security. And it turns out they had a really good communication school that I worked my way into it. So I didn't think I could make a career out of it.
Mm.
But, I get my bachelor's from it. And then I go south to Florida because Syracuse is fucking freezing and it snows all the time. So I just wanted to thaw off down there. And I started working in corporate and commercial. And look, I was getting better at it. I wound up getting my master's down at University of Miami. And then the weirdest thing was I was teaching college. I was a college professor down in Florida. Yeah. So you have this like hope, promise. Where does it go wrong? That's what you have to start figuring out.
I see it
Well,
opposite. I'm like, when did he see the light?
okay. Well, see, I always say I succumb to the dark side, but
Okay.
you then you might be a Sith.
Different
You might be a
definitions.
Sith. Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Yeah. You might
I
be
know.
you,
I'm
you might
like, I'm literally like, and then one day when I was almost 33, I did it. I lived out my dream of going to the legal brothel. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just opposite.
Yeah, yeah. So you have a red lightsaber. Noted. Okay. So yeah. So where did it all start? Well, right when the millennium hit, I was down in Jamaica. We brought a bunch of models to do a corporate video, one of which I hooked up with down there, and she said, "I'm going to go to LA. Would that be something you're interested in?" And I said, "Of course," because I wanted to make TV shows. I wanted to make movies. Where do you do it? You don't do it in Florida. You do it in LA. Well, it was a typical crash and burn Hollywood story, accumulation of debts,
Mm.
um, jobs that were available I was overqualified for. They didn't pay much anyway. So on one fateful day, especially after my model SAG card carrying girlfriend decided to stop working because she wanted to pursue a music career, I opened an ad on adultstaffing.com where there was a guy, a kid, I say kid, but he was like 18 years old, uh, looking to shoot his porno movie. And I answered the ad and I said, look, I've got 2 degrees in production. I can help you. And I mean, I can help him with the production, but I bullshitted him on the whole being able to shoot porn that I had done it before. So he trusted me on that one. And so we set up our shoot in April of 2002. And that
Mm.
was the first day. That day was the formation of the snowball. And the snowball started going downhill and getting bigger and bigger. But I had accumulated a lot of debt, and we were in the time period where internet was in its infancy. Back then it was all the VHS tapes, the features, the big productions, and the websites were just starting. And when I went back to Florida because I couldn't stay afloat in LA anymore, I knew where to chase the leads on gofuckyourself.com, where they were looking for content producers. And I would scour those boards all the time, and I would underbid everyone, and I got a reputation for delivering good product. I didn't fuck with people's money. And so the porn snowball got bigger and bigger. I stopped working in corporate altogether. That's when I succumbed to the dark side. But I was like almost $30,000 in debt when I left LA. So this was going back to Florida, was to get back on my feet. And in doing so, especially after the breakup happened, which it did, I was out of debt in 10 months, and I had this fledgling business on my hands, and I could have gone back to square life, but door number two seemed a little more interesting, and I was right. And I think the other part of it was I believe that I could use this to at least get myself in a better financial situation, and that was true. And then as the journey kept going, I looked at it like, okay, it's still going, and you're with the biggest company in the world now. Now let's set yourself up for stability in the future, which is where I am. So that was my path, summed up in about 2 minutes.
I love that. Well, I sure as fuck am celebrating stability, and I love that. I think it's so beautiful when we humans allow ourselves to be surprised by paths that we didn't necessarily expect. And I love that well, I don't know. You tell me. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of judgment, just a lot of like fun with the fact that you've like ended up here. You also don't seem like a regular like tie wearing corporate America. Like I mean, maybe that's just because of the sex industry, but the more that I got into adult related everything, like the more that I've gone down the hierarchy rabbit hole in my self-prescribed anecdotal research, the more I'm like, wait, everyone here is not quite neurotypical. Everyone here's a little more open-minded. Everyone here's a little more interesting, and so I just feel like I got magnetized.
Well, I think you're right. The corporate side never suited me. When I was working in corporate, I felt that.
Yeah.
I think when the company started going a little more corporate, I could feel it and I became sensitive to it. But I didn't really like working for people. I liked working for myself. I liked being the
Mm-hmm.
boss.
Mm-hmm.
And the boss, makes the most money. And so it made sense for me to continue on. And I think having all of those corporate gigs and running things professionally, that just naturally occurred into the porn side. I thought, well, just because we're, pornographers, it doesn't mean we're savages. We can run this above board, with respect, professionally. And so I applied all of that. So yeah, I like the fact of where the journey was. I look at it like, okay, I've got this tasty wave. I'm gonna just keep surfing it until I either land peacefully on the beach or I crash violently. Either way, let's
Yeah.
see how far this thing goes, because it sure as shit is not going to be boring. We know that.
Yeah. I am a big believer in following the curiosity and sticking with the yes until it's a fuck no and then switching gears, and
Yeah.
I love that you're willing to explore. I would love to hear, I know it's probably a lot in your book, so give us a teaser. Like, what have you seen in your work? Like, what did you learn about through work? What were you surprised by? What stands out?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot there, a lot to unpack. Well, if you're going to do an anal scene, Prep thoroughly,
Mm-hmm.
okay, especially if it's live. Do not drink coffee or because you're a vegan think that prepping escapes you because it does not. And we have the footage to show that. I would also wish to enlighten people about proper hygiene. It goes both ways, men
Yeah.
and women. I'll put you this way: anytime that I was going to be intimate with a woman, I made sure I smelled nice. I made sure
Yeah.
my breath smelled nice because you don't
Wash
want to be the
between your
guy.
cracks, both butt cracks, and pull back any foreskin, pull back any lip. Just wash between all the cracks, including armpits. Everyone, please. PSA.
Exactly. But you would be amazed that in porn world, that concept escapes them.
It's the
And
whole world.
I could
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
read the energy of the male talent,
Mm.
especially if it came down to, okay, so let's figure things out. Let's see, do I want to have them? And I would always say it like this: do I want to have you go down? And I would look at the guy, and he would either give you like a quick no, like there's something funky going on down there. I don't want to go down there. And that was like the code between me and him, where I wouldn't want to put him in that situation because I wouldn't want someone to put me in that situation where I have to go down on someone who's not properly hygienic. And I mean, there is a chapter in the book. There's 9 lessons of Vic Lagina's School of Porn in my book, and it talks about when she's on her period, prepping for anal, hygiene. I recommend anyone who's getting in any kind of sex work, read it. Read it because it will help you. I'm here to help. I'm not here to judge. But yeah, there was those instances. I think also, and this is what I would find. I figured out after when it was all over, when I was processing everything and I was writing the book, that there was a lot of darkness in the industry, and people had a lot of darkness within them, a lot of things they were battling, a lot of things they needed to come to terms with that they weren't, that they were, and this is including myself, they were numbing themselves with anything,
Mm.
really. I was numbing myself from their darkness. I didn't really have much darkness within me other than poor choices I made in relationships that affected my family that I had to process and all of that. But those within the industry, there was definitely a lot going on there. And, when you have intimate moments with people in the industry, there is that post ejaculate phase where you're talking and you're finding things. And sometimes there are trauma dumps, and you're like, ugh, okay, there's a lot to unpack there. So that was the biggest glaring notion that I got, especially after writing the book, was there was a lot of darkness in that industry, and I hope it was mainly because of how the business was and not really what the business has become now,
Mm.
because now it's more in control of creators and the sex workers because they have their own platforms, which they didn't have for decades prior to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different type of control, right? Like, as an independent creator, we have to just churn out content, and there's still really no competing with larger studio systems, and the studio systems are also fucked. Like, it's kind of a fucked world. It's so funny when my main day job was headshots before I accidentally had too many people listening to me talk about my sex life that I couldn't invite them into my house anymore. I was like, damn, actors and filmmakers are just like the angstiest people. Like, so many of them have trauma. What is this trauma? Like, I grew up on a farm and had like a really loving family. I'm like, what's happened? Everyone seems to have these poor people. Like, and and then I started talking to more and more people about their sex lives, and I was like, oh, it's not just actors. And then I became a sex worker, and at first I was like, oh, okay, oh, maybe the sex work industry like attracts traumatized people. But then when I started seeing clients, I was like, no, everyone in this whole wide world has trauma. And unless we I mean, maybe not everyone. There are some farm girls that have different kinds, it shows up at different places for everyone. But it's just so interesting. And I totally hear you. And also when I went to the XBiz Awards a couple years ago and the in memoriam was just so fucking long, I was like, damn, it's so interesting. And so, okay, all that is to say, porn and sex work are still where we learn so much. And you preempted my question, but what is your favorite thing to teach people? Because there's so much darkness and so much scary and so much difficulty, and people love to attack porn as if it's a single thing. But what do
Mm.
you love to teach people, or what have you enjoyed teaching people the most throughout your work?
that sex is a natural enterprise and we shouldn't be ashamed of it. We shouldn't, be fearful. We should be open about it. Even my own friends, my close friends, I mean, they couldn't get through the book because of the sex and the talk of the sex.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, I can only imagine what your personal life, your sex life is. It's got to be just,
It's hard for a lot of people at a level that is
yeah.
surprising to some of us. Yeah. Yeah.
So I would say, get comfortable with it because there's nothing to be ashamed about. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. If you're curious about it, quench your curiosities, learn about these things, and understand that urges or a sex drive, it doesn't make you wrong or a freak, depending on what you're into, of course. I mean, there's areas you don't go, but overall, I mean, if that's, I say fly your freak flag, of course. Just do it and do it proudly. Like, don't worry about what people think. I think that's why it was so easy for me to write a book and be so forthcoming in it because I don't give a fuck anymore. And I wish the whole thing of not giving a fuck was something I could bottle up and give to people so they break down their barriers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you sharing your not giving a fuck is you don't even have to bottle it. That's the infectious part. The more that I show up and I'm like, "Yep, I am this weird and horny and I'm going to go farther." The more other people are more likely to share with me their weird secrets. I have so many of people's weird secrets. I don't know if this also happened to you. I think it's a little different when women's are women's, but like everyone is so weird and has so many weird quirks, and I'm like, I know a lot of them, and I think it's great. Like, let the freak flag fly. I would love to hear what you have learned about play. Especially as it pertains to sex. It sounds like you can tell when talent was into each other or not, and I wonder if you think at all about like sex and playfulness or what kind of like makes that vibe fun as someone who has captured it on camera.
Well, I think if you're going to be intimate with someone, you should understand what they like. And if you want to give them a good time, you hone in on that. Um, so I think during the whole process of all of it was for me how to be the best lover I could be, and be a giving lover in all of it, not be selfish. Of course, some guys would say, it doesn't matter if they get off, it's only if you get off. And I don't believe that at all because, again, it comes down, do you want to be with this person again? So I make it a very important point to learn what gets them off. So they're not pent up. They're not holding in an orgasm that they can't have. Figure out how to get there and make sure that they're at ease in telling you how to get there. And there's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of things that happen along the way. So I don't know. I guess one of the most interesting dynamics I had was when I would be, I don't know, in situationships with professional dominatrix. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, when they come to me, they don't want to be that. They want to switch. They want to be the opposite. So sometimes you have
Mhm.
situations where, you have someone who literally pegs dudes and beats the shit out of them coming to me and they're saying, yeah, I want you to just like do what I do to men, do that to me. Now,
Mm. Mhm.
I'm not a sadist at all.
Oh,
So that was a bigger reach for me in
okay.
order to do that,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that doesn't mean you have to, be violent or inflict pain. You could just also be tender in some of those moments where you're getting them turned on and you're getting them turned on sexually where they have orgasms and they're fulfilled.
Yeah.
That could be it. So there were two, one fit one mold, one fit straight to anal, spit on my face, uh all of that. And I'm like, I might not be your guy, but I will do my darndest.
Damn, that's such a good point. Yeah, and also like intimacy can be so intense without being violent, and if that's what someone's into, it's like that's what someone's into. Do you have a favorite scene or shot that stands out in your mind? Like a favorite place you've ever put the camera or just like a shot that stands out because you like nailed it?
Well, yeah, I mean, anytime they had a shoot in the desert out here, especially when the sun was right, and you had the right model. I mean, I shot two scenes in the dry lake bed in Jean, Nevada, which is like literally 20 miles away. One was with Nicole Aniston. I don't know if you're familiar, but she is beautiful
Mm.
with big blue eyes. And we did this whole, mirage in the desert thing with her and Xander Corbis. We literally brought a bed out there with posts and billowy curtains and all of that. And I used that space, for these long shots where you're getting the vastness of the desert. That, when you mix with the natural light with the blue eyes and everything, I mean, you're like, that was that was a good day, but not without risk because you're shooting on public land,
That's what I
and
was gonna
you don't,
ask. I'm
yeah,
like, how
you
did you
don't
get
want to have,
paperwork?
well, public land, or at least federal lands, you can go on there. It's, and because it was so vast, I would literally have my crew post up with walkie talkies and keeping an eye on anything. Because if someone were to come, if the cavalry was called, we
Yeah.
could get everyone buttoned up and we could adjust to make it like we're just doing a regular photo shoot,
Oh
which
yeah.
you're allowed to do. So
It's for
highly
grandma.
coordinated. Yeah,
Yeah.
highly coordinated. I was good at this. I was good with the chaos. But there was a time where I'm like, I don't want to take the risk anymore because you could get a rap for being a sex offender, just because
Good
you're
point.
doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where it was like, you know what, especially when the company became more and more motherfuckers, I was just like, I don't know if I really want to take the risk for these people
Yeah.
anymore.
Clear. That's so, so clear. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, back to my personal pet project. Porn or not related, based on all of your sexpertise over the years, what do you think would make the best sex ed for people?
Well, I think you get into the basics. I mean, start off oral sex on a woman, assuming she's into it. Very important that you figure out hard tongue, soft tongue. Do you like fingers? You have to figure out all of these things. And honestly, it should be a discussion you have. Like, what do you like? Just tell me, I will do it. I think also with the blowjob technique, especially the guy's opinion, because there's so many situations where, you know, it doesn't feel good. And how do you
Dude,
say it? How do you say it without hurting someone's feelings to the point where that whole situation is going to end? So,
literally, that's the entire reason this podcast exists because I get so obsessed with the communication around sex. So, like, yes, 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 yes.
yes. And like does the man like his butthole touched? Does the woman like her butthole touched? Like all of this, it's all of these things. I think at the end of it all, it's always been important communication and being able to say things and phrase things that doesn't come off as offensive to your potential partner. And I still don't have the answer for this, but when a performer had a smelly hoo ha, I didn't know what to say, so I
Mm,
didn't say it because the quickest way to end your day is to upset the performer. So a lot of times things were unsaid. I think sometimes if
mm.
you had a woman who would tactfully, especially if they're the co-star, on letting them know they need to do something because there's an issue, it's important. But I don't know. I'm still trying to unlock the mystery of how do you tell a woman that her vagina smells?
Well, I'll pitch an idea.
I'm all ears. Believe me, help me.
This okay, so I can't take credit for this. I gotta remember who told me. She said, you know, if you're ever too shy, was she saying this to a dude? What was the context? Maybe we were talking about strap-ons. She basically was like, fuck her if you have a cock, like whether it's a strap on or a regular cock, fuck her, and then have her go down on you, so then she'll know.
Okay, okay. So
Which I
I
like
have
that's
I,
I
I've
just
said
tell
that in my
people.
book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, no. In my book, I mean, there's been the situations where male talent would basically like take it out of their vagina, stick it in the face, and smack them in the face with it, like they're disciplining a dog, like bad dog, you smell, like that
mm,
was like what was going on sometimes in the scenes.
yeah.
I guess that's one approach. I don't know if it's the best approach, but
I would say it's probably not the most effective. I go for the really compassionate, like, and again, I don't have the work context you've had. If I was about to shoot with this talent, I also probably would try to preserve the social fabric of the day, because otherwise you don't get your day and everyone's fucked or not fucked in the right
Mm,
ways. And with partners, especially if I'm with another lady partner, then it's easy to be like, babe, I think the pH is off. Or like, I think something's like, because it can be bacterial vaginosis. It could be like, it's not just a yeast infection, it could be a bajillion different things. And like,
sure.
they are sensitive, and that's also why guys, and I mean, I'm just gonna say, I'm making it gendered. That's why partners of any gender should wash their hands and or body parts before inserting them. Is another, just like,
Mm,
because that's what that contributes to stinks sometimes. If someone touches me without full cleanliness, it can cause problems. So I'm
yeah, I
hyper
mean,
vigilant about all of that.
it's a chemistry set down there, pH
Totally.
balance. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Delicate.
but I would say if you're a guy trying to say it to a woman without being offensive, that was always the trick for me. And sometimes I just wouldn't say it, and then we just wouldn't be intimate again. That's
Absolutely.
really what would happen.
I hear that from many people. I think usually leading with concern for the other person is a good bet, if it could be compassionate. And it's not always a good bet, because I have been very compassionate and had lots of people explode at me for various situations over the years, including intimate sexual things. So,
Mm,
hence we create this project together and talking
mm.
about sex. So, okay. Is there anything else to say about your work as you have known it? Like anything else we need to know before I ask you about hopes for the future?
No, I mean, the journey was interesting. When I talk about the ownerships, when Brazzers was just starting, you're with a bunch of younger frat bro kind of guys, and it was a different atmosphere, but they appreciated me. They took care of me, especially when, financially, if I needed a little bit of help, they were like, yeah, no problem, or bonuses. Like they knew to reward their workhorse.
Mm,
And then second ownership came, and then that was when there was a great expansion of everything, where they're buying up companies and effectively becoming the porn monopoly. And then that dude who bought the company, he gets arrested for tax evasion. So then you have the third ownership, which they're the ones I loathe. But my point in all of this is to try to tell people, this is the company that started Pornhub in 2007. I was part of that company. That was first ownership. And the things that Pornhub has done over the years, I'm not certain a lot of people in the business and outside of the business are fully aware of all of it unless they want to be. Where, this is after I had left the company. This is after COVID hit, when we were all trying to figure things out, when the wealth and the money was going more over to the OnlyFans creators. The business was all in a lot of chaos. But what was happening too, bubbling under the skin, was there was a movement to really out Pornhub for allowing abuse, trafficking to proliferate on Pornhub. And it exploded in December of 2020 when there was a New York Times expose about it. And, look, there's a lot of people in the industry who need Pornhub, okay? And I don't think they're fully aware of the people that are behind it, even now, even though they sold to fourth ownership. But the problem is there's still ties to third ownership. So I question those within the industry or those creators who use Pornhub to monetize their content. They have to ask themselves, do you want to fly this flag?
mm,
Because for your financial stability. And I would like more creators who use it to ask themselves that question, because I think a lot of them are just tuning out the noise because it affects their bottom line.
yeah.
So that's the message I try to get out to a lot of interviews I do, is just I would rather see people support, if they're going to pay for porn, and they should pay for porn, support your creators,
Yeah.
or if you like company porn, buy a membership,
Yes.
but the tube sites, it's there's regulation coming down now for a reason, is because it was the Wild West for the last 16, 17 years since its inception. So I would just like to educate people a little bit more about that, because I think it's important that you're not a patron of a company or a tube site that has gotten away with very shitty, nefarious things for a very long time
Yeah.
and made a lot of money off of it.
Here, here. There are too many things in this world where people are rewarded for naughty behavior, not the fun kind of naughty. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that was the I guess I was happy to be out of porn at that point in time, and especially not being with that company. I was helping creators with their OnlyFans. I was trying to give them the Brazzers quality for their OnlyFans because I felt it would be good for their business and their brand. Maybe I was too ahead of my time. Maybe that OnlyFans and the fans who subscribe to a creator, they don't want that polish. They want more of the amateurish.
Yeah.
So I was doing that for a little bit before it was just like, time to be done, time to go by the way of the Pornosaurus and walk into the sunset. And I did, and I did, and I was completely at ease with it after some time had passed and I watched everything that was going on like start to burn. I was like, I think the time was right.
Mm.
And I'm still here to talk, alive to talk about it, which is great because I can't say that with a lot of people from the industry.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very, very good point. So, on that note, are there any projects or anything that you're excited about for yourself going forward? You're out of the industry, but like, are you working on anything fun? Like, do you still do erotic creative stuff yourself, or is it the book? Like, tell us.
Now I think I'm at the point where I just want to be more of my own creator that has nothing to do with sex.
Yeah.
I think I want to get back into creating works of writing that people want to turn into a production. I could continue working in production, but after being in it for so long, even after 5 years of like that heavy production, I'm still kind of burned out where the stress of production is not really alluring to me.
Yeah.
But we're in an interesting phase of this book now. It's taking a life of its own, especially when I go on podcasts and people listen. And I think maybe the next phase is someone, a producer, options it, and then we start getting it into a visual form, the
Mm.
whole story. Because it's not really just a story about a pornographer. Sure, it is, but it's about a pornographer who had the front row seat to the company that changed the business forever and saw a lot of things along the way. So, a lot of times they get porn wrong in these projects. I look at it and it reeks of just insincerity, but my story's real. So, I hope that that is the next thing that happens. If not, I'll keep writing stories because there's certainly a lot more tales from the trenches.
Fuck yeah. All right. Well, I'm here for the unfolding and look forward to that. So, leave us with your thoughts on this. How do you think we collectively can co create a more loving, woo filled world?
Just be nice and considerate to each other. It sounds so simple, but it's really simple. And it's how I live my life. If I go to, say, Costco, and I only go to Costco if I'm thoroughly stoned and I can deal with it. But like, if there are people that leave their carts out, I will put them back because it's the right thing to do. Something as simple as that, and just
Yeah.
opening the door for someone, or even you see someone, hi, how are you? A little smile, whatever, just that could brighten their day. Just be kind, be human, be considerate of others. That is what I try to put out there, and I hope it comes back.
I love it. Well, thank you for joining us today here to spread ripples of love. Lovers, you can go find Vic on Instagram or X at Vic Lagina. Is that the best way for them to find your book?
I would say go to my website, viclagina.com,
There you go.
and talk
Okay.
talk about something creative. And this will be one story that I'll get through quick.
Yes.
Before I sold my studio, before I really got like the money to enjoy a leisurely life, I had two studios at my disposal, and all I shot were fuck movies in it. And I thought, as a creative person, there was something I needed to do, so I wanted to shoot something creative, and I did with James Duval. He's an indie actor. He played Vic Lagina. And it was supposed to be like a movie, like 6 Days of a Pornographer, that was based very much in truth. But the editor kind of fumbled on it. And so I used that footage for a trailer for
Mm,
the book, which is on viclagina.com.
love
That really sets the tone of what the book is. And then from there, you could order it as print, which I have right
it.
here,
So beautiful.
or or you could do the Kindle, which, yeah. Or if you really don't have time to read, and I know a lot of us don't, but you like to listen, I narrated the audiobook. It's on Spotify, it's on other streamers. That is an experience. That is what I try to nudge people to, because it's really, I had never listened to an audiobook before in my life, so I wanted mine to be a unique, special, inside my head experience. And the audiobook checks all those boxes, and I just lay the story out and I take you on a wonderfully filthy journey. So I would say consume the audiobook, but go to viclagina.com and all your dreams will be fulfilled.
I love it. So, lovers, if you love these dulcet tones, you can get more of them. Links are in the description below. Vic, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your stories.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
Lovely humans, that is our show. Remember to follow your hearts and follow your parts and follow me on the internet for links to all the things: podcast guest submissions, photo sessions, creative coaching, or to wander deeper down my internet rabbit holes. Head to sexstoriespodcast.com and lunarabi.com. Support the show and get ad-free episodes and access to the community live streams at patreon.com/howtowoo. To go deeper, see my exclusive self-portraits, masturbation, meditation, sensation, explorations of edging, or to tell me your most personal pleasures, thoughts, and feelings, maybe you even show me, join me on OnlyFans. Links are in the description below. Remember to tell a friend, leave a review, heart, or thumbs up this show wherever you're listening. It helps us grow, and you know I love watching things grow. Please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, let me know how you're spreading ripples of love, and remember to share sex stories.